Good afternoon and welcome to NHADEC's Lunchtime Connections. Today is Wednesday, April 18th, 2018, and today we'll be hearing from Mercury Systems, Argentech Solutions, and the McAuliffe Shepard Discovery Center. The purpose of this webinar is to introduce NHADEC members to one another and to give each one the opportunity to tell us about their business and their capabilities. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin, and I will be your host today. I am the Principal of Savoir-Faire Marketing Communications. I am a NHADEC member and as well a member of the NHADEC's Marketing Committee. The format of today's webinar is as follows. We have three companies presenting. Each presenter will have approximately 8 minutes to talk about their company. And at the end of each presentation, there'll be a short period of Q&A. You're welcome to either ask a question of the presenter directly, or you may type your question into the chat pane and I can pose the question to them. I will be monitoring time and keeping us on track today, and if we're running short, I may close Q&A, at which point folks still with questions left are certainly welcome to connect with the presenter directly. You can raise your hand in the webinar controls or use the chat pane if you have any questions for me during the webinar. And with that, I think we're going to get started. Today, I would like to welcome Greg Donahue, the Marketing Program Director for Mercury Systems. Greg, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Stephanie. If you can move to the next slide, please. So Mercury Systems, basically, we're an electronics company, and we primarily supply the defense industry. Our headquarters is in Andover, Mass. We have a RF manufacturing facility. It's a pretty brand new state-of-the-art facility in Hudson, New Hampshire. We also have 8 other locations across the U.S. and 4 overseas, primarily in Europe. Kind of the unique thing about Mercury is we do operate as a commercial entity, so we, like other high-tech electronics companies, we invest a lot of our revenue annually in R&D, which is a little different for the defense industry. Innovation is at the core of what we do, and our tagline is actually innovation that matters, and that's kind of what really drives us with our customers. Next slide, please. So I hate to call this a product slide. It's more like a product/capability slide, because what we supply is we manufacture from both RF and microwave and in the digital world, and we manufacture everything from components. So the lower arc of products would be some RF microwave types of products that we would make. We manufacture components such as mixers and filters, things like that, and we integrate those into assemblies such as that integrated microwave assembly you can see on the slide. The small at the lower left, you see a seeker that basically is a RF transceiver that would go in a missile. All the way to the right, there's an EW subsystem, so that's a complete subsystem with a variety of RF and microwave components in it. We would sell that primarily to primes. The upper arc of products, again, this is more along the digital line, but very similar. We manufacture components such as memory chips and secure solid-state drives that have encryption built in. We'll use those components to build out single-board computers or multi-chip modules like you see on the left. Again, we then take those products and integrate them into chassis. So the next two that you see is a safety certifiable. This would go in an avionics type application. The one next to that is a sensor processing subsystem. Something like that would go in, say, the Patriot radar system, so it would do the radar processing. We would sell that to somebody like Raytheon. And then the other two products, this is a newer market that we're doing much more in the command and control market. And these are basically server products, so just like an HP or a Dell, but we build them from the ground up with security built in, and then we ruggedize them. And applications for products like this would be like a wide-body airplane that's doing surveillance, or a distributed ground station for the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, where they need a lot of processing power, but you're going to be in tough environments where a traditional server just will not survive. So we cover quite a bit of ground with what we do, and again, primarily selling to primes and primarily selling the chassis, the integrated subsystem. We typically do not do software, so we will sell those chassis full of computer boards, networking boards, RF and microwave components, and the prime would then put the software on top, the application layer. Next slide, please. So this slide talks a little bit about, down the left you can see some of the markets that we play in. Radar and EW are our biggest. We're in a lot of air platforms and a lot of Navy platforms, starting to do a lot more with the Army and ground platforms. C2 and precision guided missiles in particular are two growth markets that we've been experiencing over the last few years. And the pictures give you an idea of some of the programs we're on. Some of these we have been on for several years, quite a long time. And at the bottom you can see, that's, again, we sell primarily, those are major customers that we sell to. And again, a lot of them are primes. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and I'm not going to go through each of these bullets because you can read them yourself, but I am going to pull out a couple of kind of what I think are the key ones. So the speed of the best commercial technology, what we really mean by that is we work with the latest electronics and technologies coming out of the commercial world. So for example, the latest Intel chip. We take that and we put it into package it in such a way that it can operate in the military environment, which can be extremely challenging for electronics. Electronics are not designed typically to be able to sit in, say, an unmanned vehicle that's going to sit in the desert at 150 degrees, then take off and be at 60,000 feet. The vibration, the temperature changes, all the things that happen when that occurs are not good for electronics. So we need to do a lot of mechanical engineering in particular to get these things to survive and operate the way they're supposed to. But we see ourselves as that conduit that takes the best commercial technology and enables the military to be able to use that. Another key point here is there's security built in. So we design from the start with security in mind, and so lots of other electronics, they'll build something and then try to bolt something on afterwards. That's not nearly as robust. We try to build with security in mind from the beginning. For our customers, what this really, one of the big things is we do a lot of open system architectures. That's the OSA you see there. And what that really means is that we drive modularity, which enables them to do the tech refreshes and swap out. So for example, they can swap out an older Intel processing card with a new one. This enables them to do this modular and add capabilities to a platform over time instead of having to take a whole system in like an EW system and replacing it with a new one. And with that, I think there is one last slide. So with that, I think I'd like to open it up for Q&A. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be willing to take them at this point.
Thanks, Greg. You were mentioning some of the programs you're in, and those are some pretty major programs. Is Mercury qualified? Is it a small business or?
So that's a great question. So we used to be a small business. In February of this year, we just outgrew it. Over the last 5 years, we've been growing at about 10% a year organically, and then about 10% through acquisitions, which is how we got into some of these other markets. That compounded growth has now finally pushed us over that. So for people that now sell to Mercury, you actually have a little bit more of a leeway with us because we now have to follow having small businesses supply us. We do still qualify as a non-traditional defense contractor, which still gets us an awful lot of leeway with primes because they need to be, that whole commercial connection really helps them when they're trying to sell to the DoD.
Wow, that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thanks. Double-edged sword.
Right, absolutely, right. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.